Hey guys, welcome back to Close Gamers. I'm Pete.
I'm Brian.
And welcome back to the second edition, the second one here of the First and 10 football podcast over here. Brian, thank you for joining me. This has been about 10 days, 2 weeks since we last got together, just because of kind of work schedules. This is my first day off in like a week and a half.
How about that?
So we have a lot to recap in a short amount of time because Brian has work here. So we're going to recap the first 2 weeks and kind of touch on moments and highlights of games we want to hit. And then we're going to go into our predictions, looking forward to week 3, with the Thursday night game being tomorrow night.
Not a great one.
Not the Dolphins and Jags?
Yeah,
it's not a great one. But hey, looking forward to seeing some Gardner Minshew. So Brian, let's start with week 1. Anything that you want to highlight, any games or particular storylines that you thought were pertinent in week 1 that happened?
Well, I mean, I first looked to the locals because that's who we follow most closely here with the Giants and Jets, and it already looks like a lost season as New York football fans here. They're combined 0-4. Week 1 didn't get off to a good start for either one. The Jets were completely listless up in Buffalo against the Bills. And then we saw the Giants on Monday night not look very good against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But looking at the Jet game, I mean, that was one of the worst performances I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was bad.
Especially early. Really in the offense, it was like getting a first down was difficult. It was just 3-and-out turnovers. I mean, the score did not indicate how bad.
No, because they kind of boat raced a little bit at the end there to kind of get back in the game.
And sometimes with garbage time, it makes it look better than it actually
100%.
was. That was not a competitive game. And I mean, if you just start with the Jets, which it's probably better to just gloss over them and move on to the rest of the league. But, I mean, it was just painful to watch.
It was, and especially that you guys had opportunities in that Bills game. You got 2 fumbles off of Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Where the one where he's running and then he got toppled over, and so he just dropped the ball because he got upended. And so you give the ball back to your offense, and I understand. We know going into the season with the whole Jamal Adams trade we talked about last episode, and then really who is Darnold working with on that offense now with Bell hurt again. And he got hurt in that game against Buffalo. But you expect something more out of your quarterback. You know, that he's not a rookie. He has to step up and kind of lead these team and mentor these guys and have some kind of leadership role there. And he does feel like he's still seeing ghosts. Like he's just kind of lost, waiting in the water, and we have no idea what's going on with him.
Oh, I mean, he'll never live down that comment on the Monday night game against the Patriots, which may be the worst game of his career, although there have been quite a few. But you look at that matchup with the Bills, you have 2 first-round quarterbacks, right, with Darnold and Josh Allen. And the difference is the foundation around one is just so much better.
Oh, 100%. What Sean McDermott has done up there in Buffalo is incredible.
Exactly. The defense, they have a top-notch defense, one of the best in the league, but they've surrounded their young quarterback with weapons. We talked the last time about going out and getting Stephon Diggs, a big wide receiver.
Huge. You see what he did in week 2?
Yeah, huge impact. John Brown has been really good for them too. So that's the difference. When you're developing a young quarterback, you got to put him in a position for success. And you said it, Darnold, there's just no weapons. Bell's hurt. They have nothing around him, while Allen, you know, who knows who really is the more talented player? I mean, Darnold was looked at as maybe the better prospect of the two. But there's just no comparison between the teams.
No, it's hard to make a legitimate comparison because I really do believe Darnold has supreme talent. I mean, you know, we could jump around here in week 1 and 2. We've seen what he did in week 2 there at the garbage time at the end when the Niners are killing them. How he escaped the pocket, he rolled out to his left, throws across his body, and he hits a touchdown. So you see that he has the skills there, but it's not only Diggs in Buffalo over there. You have a great stable of running backs. I like that kid Singletary that they have running the ball back there. And a fantastic defense Buffalo has. And that helps when Josh Allen's making those mistakes and putting the ball on the carpet. Well, they can get it back the ball or hold the opposing offense to a field goal or no points at all. What can you say about with the Jets there? Who they got? Frank Gore?
That's who they're left with now.
37-year-old Frank Gore. That's what we're relying on for this quarterback. And Adam Gase is also to blame. You could blame the front office all you want because they definitely deserve the blame with the Jets. But Adam Gase is going to get fired in the middle of the season. I'm calling it right now. He will be one of the first coaches to go.
I think that's got to be a pretty safe bet. He just looks like he's completely lost. I mean,
he's been lost since day one.
He's been lost since day one. You know, you had players speaking out saying they don't like the environment the practice is going. And then I just saw a clip today that Gase said, they didn't speak up during the week about that. If they have a problem, they should say something. Well, he just looks like he has no handle on this team whatsoever. No. But even worse yet, talking about the front office and the ownership, you have Christopher Johnson coming out and saying this guy is an offensive genius. He's sticking by him.
He's a QB guru.
Is he watching what the rest of us are watching?
I guess
you
not.
You really have to wonder.
No. And people will make excuses for him because of the lack of talent, but you could also blame Gase. He's pushed away his greatest stars. He's put wedges in between them, and is the front office's then fault that even middling pieces in someone who's a decent player and like Robbie Anderson, you just let these people walk out the door, no questions asked, and it has definitely set this franchise back once again.
And that goes back to the Miami days with Gase, the running back Jay Ajayi.
I didn't even like him there, and I thought it was a bad hire from the start, and we've seen that going into week 2. I mean, we knew what the Niners were going to do. And even with all those injuries, even with Garoppolo doesn't play the second half, Nick Mullins is coming in the game. They intercept him at one point, and it still doesn't matter. You know that team is dead in the water, and they're not going anywhere, and the Niners just rolled them with mostly backups.
Exactly. That was the thing about that game, is the Niners lost. It was key player after key player. They were dropping like flies in that first half. Defensive lineman, Bosa, and then Solomon Thomas, pretty much back-to-back plays, and you lose the quarterback Garoppolo. And how about Raheem Mostert, who starts the game with an 80-yard touchdown on the first play from scrimmage? Then he winds up going out of the game. He's out. So they just had backups all over the place, and it still was not a competitive game.
No, not at all. And that situation is maybe worse than I even expected over there in New York. Equally, as you said, as you touched on with the Giants, if we want to switch to that in their 2 weeks, I thought they've been completely listless. I don't want to hear any Giants fans out there, and I know a lot of them, of like, oh, we looked pretty decent in week 2. You're playing the Bears and Mitchell Trubisky, and you still couldn't really get any offense there. And I know you lost Barkley, and it's a tragic loss, but he's shown himself as being pretty injury-prone here at the start of his young career, and you still have some decent pieces there in Ingram, in Sterling, Shepard. Where is everyone? Where is everyone?
You know, it's a good question. It just looks like another lost season for the Giants, too. I mean, and that game in Chicago, you know, they're down big. They kind of managed to rally. They had a chance. They're driving with the ball with a chance to win. But you never really got the sense they were going to score a game-winning touchdown there.
You knew it. And I think it's too early to say, because there was a report I was watching today on, I think it was on The Herd, where they're saying that people in the organization, the Giants organization, are getting frustrated already with Daniel Jones. And I'm like, the guy has had like 14 starts.
Exactly.
Where that he has some talent, but not a lot. His best talent is now out for the season. That offensive line is still a work in progress. A lot of those draft picks, the free agent signings of Nate Solder, have been complete busts.
Yep.
And then the defense is an absolute turnover machine where they have to change over every level of that defense whatsoever. What do you expect Jones to do? What were you expecting? A Super Bowl run this year? I mean, I think you have to buy him more time, and you just brought in a new coach in Joe Judge. You're changing the entire culture over there. And I actually was one of the people supported him during the offseason, and we talked about that last episode. I liked what he really did in changing the culture over there, making them more physical. That takes time. In 2 games, it doesn't miraculously change.
Exactly. I mean, when you bring in a new coach, you have to expect that there's going to be an adjustment period. And we don't really know anything about Joe Judge yet as far as his coaching ability. What we know is that he's a tough guy. It certainly seems like the way he handles practices and everything. And you figure the Giants are going to be a more disciplined team going forward. But I totally agree with you. I think he needs more time, and you cannot make the determination already that Daniel Jones is not the guy.
Yeah, he's a bust already, man. That's ridiculous.
He showed some signs last year, especially that first game he played against the Bucs. That was a very impressive game, and even though he didn't win a lot of games last year, I thought he showed a good ability to make plays. He's got the arm. He can make plays. So, I think he definitely needs a lot more time. And I still think, there's a lot of ability there.
Yes, he's obviously going to learn defenses more. He's going to improve. He has to get that fumble issue under control whatsoever. But let's see him progress this season. And even at the end of the season, they're probably going to win 5-6 games tops.
That's fair.
Right? But if he plays well or you see progression on that, you have to then look at that upside of, all right, we got our guy. Now let's surround him with the talent. Let's build out that defense. That stuff is a project when you hire a new coach. This isn't Cleveland. We're not changing over people every single year. You have to buy into what you're doing if you make the hire.
And now it's a lot more difficult because you touched on Barkley getting hurt, which
it's
unfortunate. As soon as that happened, you knew it was bad.
Oh, you knew it had to be the knee or something.
Right. And a torn ACL, and now just today I saw Sterling Shepard went on IR. So
he has a toe issue he's got going on there.
So they're going to have limited weapons for their game coming up against the 49ers.
Yeah, definitely. And the Niners will then get to beat up on a second Mount Life team coming up in this
Mullins,
league. With Nick Mullins. But we'll get to that. Speaking of teams in the first 2 weeks and coaches that I believe are on the hot seat, there's two I definitely want to touch on. First one is Mike Zimmer. We touched on that in the first episode. This Vikings team has not only went way below my expectations, I think way below everyone's expectations. They, Brian, have looked atrocious through 2 games. I mean, and let's not say like, oh, they put up all these yards against the Packers. They were mostly playing from behind. Those were, again, garbage time touchdowns where you knew the Packers were just going to score if it got close, and they did. And Rodgers put on a masterful performance in week 1. But then you have the Colts. You go to Indy. And against Phillip Rivers, and there's not a lot of players there. They just lost Mack last week. And you do that? 11 points? Cousins throws 3 picks. He has like 100 yards. Yeah. What is that?
I have to agree with you with Mike Zimmer being on the hot seat.
Absolutely.
This has been a dreadful start for them. And, we talked about the Bills game with Stephon Diggs. That created a huge hole in that Vikings
Way
offense.
More than I realized.
And look, that passing offense just doesn't look nearly the same without him. And, they could still run the ball with Dalvin Cook, who's a really good weapon, but nothing is really working with that offense right now. Being held to 11 points in that game against Indianapolis, and Cousins, that may have been his worst game as a Viking.
Yeah, that was bad. That was really, really bad. And to look at Mike Zimmer, and he's supposed to be this, defensive guru, his defense has been shredded. What did they give up? 42 points or whatever?
At home,
week 1?
too.
Yeah. And then you give up another 28 to Phillip Rivers there in Indy. Like, they're getting run all over. They're getting passed all over. There's next to nothing in pass rush. And I guess I didn't realize that they've lost some key pieces. And
Everson Griffin.
Everson Griffin. I thought Yannick Ngakoue would be a good spot there. Maybe he's still getting, his feet into the water there and trying to get under himself. But this secondary has particularly been suspect.
Yeah, it's been brutal, and I think this was a team that both you and I thought could do some pretty good things.
Yeah.
We talked about in years past this being a team that looked like it could be Super Bowl material.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it looks like it's all falling apart at the seams now.
Yeah, it's not a good look, and he's another one in Mike Zimmer where I think he could be on the hot seat in the middle of the season if this goes south. And Cousins, who I believe, and you could correct me if I'm wrong down below, is in a contract year right now. This is not a great way to start that. If you're expecting another 3-year, $84 million guaranteed contract, you're not getting it with the performance you're giving here.
Not whatsoever, and so that just adds to the problems. Who knows if they end up going the route of drafting a quarterback or what, but there's going to be a lot of questions to be answered with that.
The route they're going, they're going to be in the top 5 the way they're looking. I don't expect them to finish there, but I don't see them now as the perennial NFC kind of top contender, like in the top 6 that I saw them the last time we did this podcast.
Definitely not.
Another coach that is obvious on the hot seat but needs to be talked about is Matt Patricia in Detroit. Through their 2 games of 0-2, it's not even that the Packers game was more like, oh, wow, that was so shocking. No, you're in Lambeau. They really, they end up losing by double points there. Matt Stafford throws that awful pick 6 that he did around his own goal line. None of that was surprising. I want to go to week 1 against the Bears. Yeah. You're up by 3 touchdowns. 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, and Mitchell Trubisky in your stadium scores 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. He's a Belichick guy. He's a defensive guru. Give me a break. Give me a break with that.
Yeah, that's a big problem. The much maligned Mitchell Trubisky engineering that kind of a comeback, and this was a guy who we didn't even know if he was going to be the quarterback for the Bears.
Him or Foles, who knows what's going on.
Right, and Trubisky ended up winning the job, and that was a great week 1 moment for him, and now, of course, he started 2-0. Which
is shocking in its own right.
But to Matt Patricia, you had to think there were going to be better things, especially from the defensive standpoint, considering his background coming from the New England tree and Bill Belichick. And that's really the concerning part. If you're the Lions, is that you brought in a guy who's supposed to fix your defense, and if anything, they've gone backwards.
Yes, and he's also a guy that he struggled with changing the culture over in Detroit, arguably maybe being too Belichick-like with not having the pedigree that he has. So especially veteran players were not taking him seriously. He had many fights and kind of, quote-unquote, lost the locker room. Well, a lot of those players are gone now. And this is supposed to be his guys, the guys that are buying in, and that's the performance that you would have put on. And then remember, at the end of that game, the Lions drive the field, have a chance to win the game. Stafford throws a touchdown, or should have been touchdown, to the rookie DeAndre Swift, drops it. Yeah. And is that not what personifies the Lions right there?
Yeah, it really does. Where are you on Stafford? Because he's a big enigma for me, a guy who can throw the ball for days. I mean, he can throw for 5,000 yards on any given season, but he just has proven year in, year out that he doesn't get this team to a winning level.
I'm mixed on Stafford, if I'm being honest. Yeah, he definitely has all the arm talent in the world. You've seen him make the playoffs. You've seen him will his team here. Can you argue that maybe he hasn't had great offensive pieces and definitely great defenses? Yes. Yeah. And so that adds into the contribution of when we're talking about Stafford. But do I also think he's the guy that can lead you, especially when you're in a hurt, seemingly snake-bitten franchise in Detroit? You have to be better. You have to be almost Mahomes-like or something in that degree, that you have to be the one that's carrying the team and setting the example. And I don't think he's that guy. He's not overly athletic.
He makes too many mistakes.
He makes way too many mistakes. And in a league that we increasingly see going to the mobile quarterback, or at least the quarterback that can roll out and do an occasional run, he's in the more old standard model of a Breeze or a Brady and just doesn't have any of the talent that they do.
Right. And, I mean, of course, he had Calvin Johnson. Yes. He's one of the best for so many years. But since he's retired, he hasn't had that number one guy. No. We've seen it in flashes with Kenny Golladay, who I think is a good young receiver.
He's a good player.
He's been hurt to start.
He's had the Marvin Joneses, the Golden Tates of the world.
More complimentary kind of pieces, not that bell cow number one receiver that Johnson was, Hall of Fame caliber player.
And I get that, and I understand that they really haven't had a solid, stable running back since, honestly, Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
But you get a good performance in Adrian Peterson, who washes up and shows here in Detroit, runs for 93 yards, and then to blow it like that, to drop a potential game-winning touchdown, it just shows who the Lions are. And much like Cleveland, there's just a couple of these teams in this league that I feel like are never going to get out of the holes that they are in.
Well, let's get to Cleveland for
a minute. Let's go for
it. An interesting couple of weeks they had. They got bombarded by the Baltimore Ravens.
Absolutely annihilated in week one.
And then they come back week two, and it's a Thursday night game, and it's against the rookie Joe Burrow in his first road game. So you figured they were going to give you a good performance. And I think you had to like a lot of what you saw from them in week two. The fact that they got the running game going, both backs, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Kind of mixed results from Baker Mayfield at quarterback, but a win's a win for them, and any win they can get, I think they have to be happy with.
I'm more on the downside of Cleveland. Yeah, you got absolutely annihilated in week one, but you're arguably playing the best team in the league, so that wasn't that shocking. I guess it was a little bit shocking for me because I believe I said on the first podcast that I expected that game to be closer, even though we knew the Ravens would win, because of what Cleveland did to Baltimore and giving them one of the only losses of the season they had last year. I think it was like 42-25 or something last year, and they really controlled that game. But to get destroyed the way you did, and then to come back on a short week against Cincinnati, all right, Joe Burrow has looked good, okay? But this is Cincinnati, people, okay? And every time I feel like Baker has played Cincinnati and plays great, everyone goes, this is it, the Browns are back. And I'm like, you're playing the Bengals. That's what you're playing. That's the worst defense in the league in the last couple of years historically, and the amount of points and yards that the Bengals have given up. That's who he's going against, and he didn't even look better than Burrow on Thursday night, at least in my opinion.
Burrow was impressive.
He has been impressive through 2 weeks.
And we go back to that week one game where I had the upset, and boy, that was close. It came down
I
to
know.
a field goal.
I thought you
end.
had it there.
I thought I had it.
But classic also, again, snake-bitten franchises, you have the chance to go to overtime and Bullock seemingly hurts his hamstring on the kick, and that's how the Bengals lose. Like, just classic with these teams, man.
Yeah. And then if we just, while we're bringing up our picks, because I think we both did pretty darn well in week 2.
We definitely did well in week 2.
It was a week where just about all of the favorites won. I took a couple of chances that backfired, which I was really kicking myself. I was riding the Washington football team after their week 1 win. I don't know why, because Arizona's looking very good off to a 2-0 start. And then the other one was, I don't know why I put my trust in the Houston Texans, because we talked about that being a team that you can never trust. And the Ravens right now look like maybe the best team in the league.
Yeah, and Lamar did not even particularly play well in that game, and they still had that game in hand by halftime. And I just, that game, watching that, it made me feel bad for Deshaun Watson, because I'm like, he is as talented, arguably, as Lamar and Mahomes, and has nowhere near the team support.
You think he misses DeAndre Hopkins?
He definitely 100% does. You see what he's doing with his best friend Kyler over there. But what Bill O'Brien, as we talked last episode, has done to that team, it's just so sad. But just speaking a little bit to finish off on Cleveland, is I still don't trust Baker Mayfield, and I want to like him, but to win for this team and for this season, if they want to be one of those 7 seeds and kind of make the playoffs, because obviously this year 7 teams in each conference are making the playoffs in the new playoff format, they need to ground and pound the game exactly what they did, except do it against better defenses and better teams. Him working off of the play action and throwing to his complementary, arguably superstar receivers there once upon a time in OBJ and in Jarvis, that's what he needs to do. But you need to pound it with Chubb and Hunt. And being somewhere in that 250 yards, maybe a game, maybe a couple touchdowns, that's what Baker is. He ain't going to carry you like Burrow seemingly was trying to will the Bengals on the other side.
Yeah, I think that's true. And it was a very good game for the Browns as far as Beckham, one of his better games.
He woke up finally.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been some trade rumors surrounding him. I don't really know how much stock to put into that. He seems like a guy, who knows. The Giants, I think, were best off getting rid of him.
He doesn't feel like he fits there in Cleveland, but unless they go majorly south, they're not going to trade him this season.
Yeah, probably not. And so I think, what do they have? Washington this week, the Browns? Another winnable game at home. I would expect them to win that game.
They definitely should if they plan on making the playoffs. And on the other side of it, as we've touched, Burrow has impressed me through 2 weeks. I thought he's looked really, really good, really composed, and just a command of the offense and kind of the players where he doesn't have all the tools available to him. But I think what's most impressed me is he doesn't feel like he's focusing on one read on the field. He seems like he's scanning and looking at his second and third options, and that is way farther along he is than I thought he would be, especially with no offseason.
Yeah, he's doing a good job spreading the ball around. And that Thursday night game, he targeted the number 1 receiver, A.J. Green. I think it was 13 times. Yeah. And Green did not come through. He only had 3 catches.
Boyd was pretty good, though.
Boyd was very good. But obviously they need Green to step up and be the legitimate number 1.
And you also can't be having your rookie quarterback set a record and throw 61 attempts. And set the record for completion, I think, like 37.
Need more balance.
That's not a recipe. You have Joe Mixon. Yeah. Use the man, even if it's out of the backfield passing. Like, you got to run the ball a little bit more there. Other thing I think we should touch on through the first 2 weeks, since I'm a Rams fan, and we touched on your Jets.
Very good start.
I kind of want your opinion. What have you honestly thought of this team through 2 weeks?
I think you have to be impressed with a lot of things. I mean, they've beaten 2 NFC East teams, starting with that Cowboy game. But I think the thing that stands out the most is that Jared Goff is playing at a high level.
He's been playing great.
He's playing with accuracy and using all his weapons. And, I mean, they don't really seem to have too much of a running game right now with the absence of Todd Gurley. But Goff he's doing the job. I mean, that game against Philly, they were in total command. I picked them to win that game. You, of course,
I did. I am 0-2 in Ram picks, and I am happy to be 0-2 in Ram picks.
But, I mean, I think you really have to like what you've seen. And Sean McVay, he's still the guy there. And I think, they did some cleaning up in the offseason as far as clearing out. We talked about Todd Gurley and some of the guys who maybe weren't necessarily happy with their
Cooks
role.
As well with the injuries history.
And I think maybe that's allowed them to come together as a team better, and they're playing as a more cohesive group, led by Goff playing the way he has. And look, it's a very competitive division. You have the 49ers in last.
It's the best in football, let's just be honest.
With
it's the best.
The other three teams at 2-0, so it's going to be a fight the whole way, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I have liked what I've seen over the last 2 weeks. I think they have, it's been ranked before the season started as one of the hardest schedules in the league. I think 4th most difficult. So we know it's going to be a gauntlet in that division and what they're facing this season. However, they have impressed me with the running game. And now while you say that the running game, they don't have a straight-up bell cow number one that they did with Gurley. But what they have done with Malcolm Brown in week 1, and then what just came back here with Darrell Henderson in week 2, because you also lost Malcolm Brown, and Cam Akers also got hurt early there in week 2 against Philly. Cam had, I believe he fractured his ribs, and then Malcolm Brown broke his pinky on his hand. So he seems like he'll come back for week 3. Cam Akers probably is going to miss another week. But they have grounded and pounded and run the ball, worked the play action, got Goff on the move. They kicked him out of the pocket to the left, to the right, and he is very, very accurate on the run. He can still throw. People are very underestimating the deep ball, the beautiful deep ball and accuracy that he can throw. But this offense so far through the first 2 weeks has been more 10, 15, 20 yards. Will pick you off piece by piece with these long drives. And that has really impressed me. And with the running game, they have controlled the clock and they have dominated the two teams they have really played. That Cowboy game shouldn't even have been as close as it was.
Well, you had Cowboy fans complaining about that offensive pass interference call on Michael Gallup, which, who knows what would have happened after that. Did you think it was an egregious call?
No, I think it was definitely a penalty. Yes, sure, did Jalen sell it 100%, but that's what you're supposed to do. But Gallup clearly extended the forearm. You're not allowed to do that, and the penalty should have been thrown.
But then back to the Rams, the guy that's impressed me is Cooper Kupp. This is a guy who I've always been a fan of since his rookie year. He just seems to be that guy that Goff trusts anywhere on the field. He catches the ball. He's reliable. And they were a different offense the year they went to the Super Bowl after he got hurt. I just think
it was a piece they were missing between him and Gurley. They were missing that.
And now they locked up Woods, too, to a contract.
Yeah, I don't know where they keep getting all this money from. In the last month, it's been Ramsey, Cooper, and Woods now. But I'm happy they are all staying there. I like what I see through the first 2 weeks, particularly especially on the defensive side. What Brandon Staley, the new defensive coordinator, has done with that young bunch. I mean, Micah Kiser, the young linebacker, just won NFC Defensive Player of the Week. That's something I would have never predicted would have happened. He was great against the Eagles there in week 2. So I've been impressed with what I've seen. Got a very tough matchup here coming up against Buffalo, but they have looked good. It's just going to be very hard, in my opinion, for them to make the playoffs because that division is the best by far in football.
I totally agree. I mean, Seattle looks like they are back to Super Bowl form, and it's the offense that's carrying the way.
Although that defense, though, I know we can't touch on it a lot because we're limited on time. That defense is the worst in the league through 2 weeks. They have given up the most passing yards through the first 2 weeks. Pete Carroll, he wants to go anywhere Super Bowl, he got to get that fixed because they have looked terrible on that side of the ball.
Well, luckily they have Russell Wilson who's saving them, and I think
he's a little elixir. He kind of glosses over all the other problems.
I think we might finally stop hearing about the fact that Wilson has never garnered an MVP vote because he's clearly the front runner.
If he keeps going the way he's going and he doesn't get even one MVP vote, then there's someone in the front office that doesn't like him. There's a conspiracy going on. That's what I would say.
The thing about that last Sunday night game against New England is he threw 5 touchdown passes, and the first drive they had, he had a pick 6 against him. Now, how many guys would rebound against the Patriots and have basically a career game like that? I mean, their offense is really impressive. The weapons, DK Metcalf is coming into his own, Lockett as well. So you talk about the defense needing to step up, but that offense is going to
scary. It's definitely scary, and that was an extremely, as it seems to be always, entertaining game in week 2 there. Every time New England and Seattle gets together, it's a great game. We can't touch on it long, but I thought Cam also has been great through 2 weeks.
He really has. I mean, I think getting with Bill Belichick now, he's getting the most out of him. He looks like the guy that we've seen at times when he's at the top of his game, can make all the throws, and he really has looked impressive.
Yeah, and maybe where I think me and you kind of thought that the Patriots were going to be pretty down this season and maybe get a decent draft pick as a quarterback. I know I did. This might be something that you're buying in here, where maybe Cam is a longer option past this year. The way he's looking,
I really think so. And with the Patriots, they're just always going to figure it out.
I know, it's the truth. Now, our final point before we get into predictions, because we're limited on time, the other side of it, and the New England side, Tom in Tampa Bay. What have you thought about the Bucs through 2 weeks? I've not been overly impressed at all.
No, not overly impressed. Definitely better in week 2, but it was a much different competition going into the Dome against the Saints in week 1. That was going to be a tough matchup. We both liked the Saints in that game, and we saw what happened there. And then you play a home game against Carolina, who's one of the more down teams in the league at this point, and now is without their best weapon in Christian McCaffrey.
Out 4 to 6 weeks now.
Right, so that's a big loss for them. But yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, Brady hasn't looked great. He hasn't had his full complement of weapons. Chris Godwin missed the last game. Mike Evans stepped up and had a big game last Sunday. I still think Brady is capable of still putting up decent numbers and leading a pretty good offense. But through 2 games, I think there's still a lot to wonder just how good this team is going to be. And by the way, where is Rob Gronkowski?
I know, and I don't know if you caught any of the game here in week 2 against Carolina. He was dropping passes left and right. I mean, he didn't remotely look like old Rob Gronkowski. Even he looks a complete shell of himself. He's not. The only good thing he did was grab that onside kick there at the end. I would say maybe should have stayed in retirement the way he's looking right now.
Well, I think maybe he should have learned a lesson from Jason Witten that coming back after you've
doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be what you were.
No, and what I thought why he might come back and be productive is because having that connection and chemistry with Brady. I thought he still would, and maybe he still will in the weeks to come, but I think you have to be concerned he didn't catch a single pass on Sunday. I mean, that is not the Rob Gronkowski we've come to expect.
And also Tom Brady is they need to pound the ball. I know he's just learning the playbook, and you've seen the flashes of what Leonard Fournette
he's been good.
Did that, breaking open the game and completely sealing it. They're going to have to pound the rock more there in Tampa because Tom, in my opinion, he's at this point in his career, it looks like he's more of a game manager type. And now I know it's hard to discount Tom Brady. I'm not saying they can't win any games or potentially make a big run in the playoffs, but his arm strength, along with Drew Brees in that division, it looks like it's dramatically decreased. They're not, pushing the ball down the field as they once were. It's a lot of passes short into the running backs, and I think that's going to bite them as they go more and more into the season. Well, we're going to get into the colder weather, and you're going to have to pound the ball and throw it through the wind and through the cold weather. I think that's going to become a problem. So they better change more to a running style offense.
And Breeze, too, I'm concerned about.
Yeah, that Monday night performance was, I don't care, he had 312 yards. He had so many completions to his running backs and tight ends. I think his average throwing per yards was 4.8. It's not good enough. It's not good enough.
And without Michael Thomas for who knows how long, it's not good enough. We thought Emmanuel Sanders would step up and be kind of his go-to receiver. He was basically non-existent.
He is not connected with Emmanuel Sanders at all, and you could argue that Sean Payton is the one to blame for the Michael Thomas injury because when those starters should have not been on the field or they should have been kneeling the ball against Tampa in week 1, Sean Payton kept going, trying to score more, and that's when Michael Thomas at the end of that game got his ankle rolled up on. So you could blame Sean Payton for that injury, and he's had a history, as we've seen, of kind
pushing
of pushing the envelope and maybe running up the score and trying to make a point. That might have cost him here going forward into the season.
And look, that offense cannot function without him. I mean, what did he have, 135 catches last year or something?
He was setting the record. Yeah. So he is going to be sorely missed there, but Breeze and Brady are something to watch. Being the 2 oldest quarterbacks in the league, it shouldn't shock you as a viewer or shock us as much as it does that, all right, well, the 41 and 43, what'd you expect? Yeah, but as great as they are and trying to make clear Super Bowl runs, I expected a little bit more. I'm a little bit concerned here going through the first 2 weeks.
And just before we get to the predictions here, I think one game we have to touch on because it was one of the wilder scenes out there was the Cowboys and Falcons and Dallas being down.
I didn't even want to talk about it, to be honest.
Well, we'll just go through it quickly. But being down 15 points with, about 6 minutes left, and for Dak Prescott to rally that team.
I think it was 4 45 or something left in the fourth quarter. You're down 15.
Down 15. And look, the Falcons have the reputation for being choke artists, and this is exactly why. You have that kind of a lead and blow it, and what a game for Dak Prescott. I mean, the 3 rushing touchdowns to rally his team the way they did, and that onside kick. I mean, can you jump on the football if you're the Atlanta Falcons? I don't know what they were watching there, but what a game.
Can I give credit to Dallas? Sure. Because they stayed in the game, right? That's what you're supposed to do, and, they always talk about Dak being a gamer. Sure. Also, don't fumble the ball 4 times and lose 3 of them in the first quarter. That might help you to not get down by multiple touchdowns. But anyway. But the Falcons have established firmly after that game that you're a bunch of choke artists that don't need to be taken seriously. And something needs to change over there. Because I like Dan Quinn. I really do. And you can't necessarily blame him for that collapse. But that special teams coordinator, he's not getting on the plane with me if I'm going back to Atlanta. He's done. And those guys are getting at least 2 or 3 of them just to send a message that maybe the more lower roster guys, they're cut. They're not coming back with me. I mean, how do you not know the rules? I know the rules. I'm watching my phone screaming at it, grab the ball. The kicking team can't grab the ball until after it's past 10 yards. You can grab the ball as soon as the ball is kicked, and you're staring at it. They're forming a little huddle party around it. I just don't understand what any of those players were thinking whatsoever.
It just takes away a game that the Falcons should have had in the bag, a game that they're feeling good about on the road with a big lead, and an offense that has a lot of weapons. Calvin Ridley's become a household name.
He's been great.
And while Julio Jones, didn't really have the best
Not
games,
in week 2.
Ridley really stepped up and played well.
And that also spoke, speaking of Julio Jones, of more why the Falcons seem to be choke artists, because that game definitely could have been put out of reach. When I think it was Gage did that wildcat, they threw it to him and he threw down the field to Julio Jones. He catches that pass 99 out of 100 times for a touchdown and dropped it. And so that not only spoke to the poor day that he had, but just you right there, when that happened, I went, oh, here we go. I already had feelings in the third quarter that the Falcons were going to collapse. And then as it's going towards the end there, I had my headphones in because I was at work and I'm listening to it. And I go, all right, cool, Dallas is going to be 0-2. And then to hear that they got that onside kick was, a joke. And then to see, Greg the Leg, my former Rams kicker, he gets a kick that sways to the left. It cuts back to the center in front of about 26,000 fans they had over there in Dallas. Just one of the games we're going to remember for a very, very long time.
No doubt. Unbelievable. I'm glad it was one where they had the bonus coverage after the slate of 1 o'clock games in, so I watched the last part of it, and after the onside kick, you get the big completion of C.D. Lamb, was really good his first 2 career games, and like you said, a game to remember for sure.
Yeah, and a final point to touch on that, Dan Quinn, as he was last year, and then kind of the Falcons, their play towards the end of the season saved his job. He's another one in boiling hot water to start the season so far.
Yeah.
Because we're short on time, we're going to jump into some picks, and then, next week or so, we could touch on some things we didn't do this week. So the first game, Brian, being tomorrow night and the Thursday night game, as we touched on earlier, not really that exciting. You have the 0-2 Dolphins going to Jacksonville. What have you thought of Gardner Minshew so far at the start of the season?
I really liked what I've seen, and this was a Jaguar team that people thought going in was going to be the worst team in the league.
I definitely said it.
Ticketed for the number 1 pick, and they're like, no, we're going out and playing this season, and just because they basically gutted their defense didn't mean they couldn't still be competitive, and it's the offense that's gotten it done. Minshew, the first
6
week,
touchdowns in 2 games.
And 19 of 20 in that first game. In the win, they got a surprising win over the Colts. They came back week 2. They played a very competitive game against Tennessee, lost it 33-20, but Minshew has looked good. He's got a good number 1 receiver in Chark. I like them in this game tomorrow night against Miami.
Yeah, I'm picking the Jags as well. Miami has played hard, and I thought they really stayed in the Buffalo game that they played. I expected that to be close. That was also a weird game, too, because they had the lightning storms, so it was not only delayed, but we couldn't really see some of the coverage that happened in that game. And I don't know if you saw that some people, they literally didn't have the footage of some of those touchdowns. And so you had to go on Twitter to fans that were in the stadium to actually see on their phones the terrible quality on their cell phones that they had there of the touchdowns. So that was a weird game. But the Dolphins they're rebuilding. They're still doing things over there. I like a lot of the pieces that Brian Flores has brought in. We're on Tua watch. I mean, that's kind of what we're waiting for here in the season. I think it's going to be many games away, maybe 6 or 8 games away until we see that. But Jacksonville maybe isn't tanking for Trevor. Maybe Gardner Minshew was trying to prove that, hey, this is my job. I'm proving that I can be a franchise quarterback, and I've liked what I've seen from them so far. There's a lot of holes still in that team. Don't get me wrong. They're not making the playoffs. They're probably finishing at 6-10, but they're going to be competitive and interesting, I think, in every game they play.
And, one thing, too, about them is I was, thinking, who is the coach of the Jets? And I'm thinking, is it still Doug Marrone? Because I thought with all the changes, they must have made a change.
He's one of these coaches that has somehow survived everything that has happened there. The fights with players, the exodus of star players leaving there, somehow is still there.
Yeah.
I guess that speaks to Shaka Khan really just likes him as a coach. And remember, he got that job because he got a recommendation from Bill Belichick. So that also speaks to the relationship that he has with the greatest coach probably ever. In the Sunday games, starting in the 1 o'clock games, Bears at Falcons. I'm sorry. After everything I just said, I'm taking Atlanta. I do not trust Mitchell Trubisky and the Bears. I think it's a phony 2-0 that they are right now. I mean, as we talked about, you beat the Lions and then you beat the Giants. I'm not really that impressed with what's happened there. Yes, I like Matt Nagy a lot, but the Falcons, if they go 0-3, you might see Dan Quinn getting fired after this game. So they need to win this game.
Well, I might surprise you here, but I think I'm going to go the other way.
All right.
Just because when you have a game like we talked about in Dallas, I just think that's one of those games that can be so demoralizing that really takes an impact on your team. And I think it's going to be a close game, but I just see the Bears finding a way to slug it out, their defense finding a way to get a big turnover of Matt Ryan late. Give me the Bears by a field goal.
Fair enough. Another game close to home for me is the Rams are going up to Buffalo. I'm not going to surprise you here because I'm going to take Buffalo and pick against the Rams again. The Rams have been impressive so far, but so has Buffalo. And playing at home where, yes, I know there really isn't any fans there. I think Josh Allen has played fantastic, almost a 70% completion percentage through the first 2 weeks. He has looked great. This is going to be a slugfest. This is going to be more in that 27-24 kind of mantra that I'm feeling for this game, but I'm still taking Buffalo.
I'm going to go Buffalo too. It's hard to win back-to-back games on the road. Rams had a big win.
Especially that they had to travel back out west because of COVID and then travel all the way back over the east. They couldn't stay here for the week.
So, and I think the Bills are an impressive team. And we know they have a really good defense. I think they're going to get after Jared Goff in this game and make life a little difficult on him, so I'm with you, Buffalo.
And as the interesting stat also says here, the Rams are 3-13 versus the AFC East since 2002, which is the worst against any division. The Washington football team goes to Cleveland. I'm taking Cleveland because you need to win this game. And this is another completely winnable game. Let's run the ball. The Redskins' strength of that team is their defensive line. Can they protect Baker? I think that will be the interesting question that happens on Sunday afternoon. But I see that there's too much talent here to lose to Washington. I like what Ron Rivera is trying to do over there, but he doesn't have all the pieces yet through all the turmoil that they've had this offseason. I'm taking Cleveland.
Yeah, I'm not trusting the Washington football team on the road.
Not again.
Yeah, not again. That was a bad pick last week, and I think Cleveland's going to ride a little momentum here, extra time to prepare for this game given the last Thursday. Get the running game going, keep feeding Nick Chubb the rock, and I think good things happen for that offense. So I think the Browns win this one.
The next game is the Titans at Vikings. And normally I would take the Vikings. I'm taking the Titans. I'm fine with being wrong if the Vikings pull this out because they need to. But the way Ryan Tannehill has looked through 2 games has been another fantastic. Maybe it's just that perfect scheme coach fit that Mike Vrabel is teaching over there in Tennessee. I think the Titans have been very impressive that you see in week 2. They can, out-offense someone if they need to and scoring 33 points. And then in week 1, you saw more of kind of the defense of what they went through there. And the Vikings, as we talked about earlier, and Kirk Cousins have been atrocious. So I'm taking the Titans.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. Ryan Tannehill has been great, and I think the thing that stands out is the running game hasn't really carried them. Last year in their big playoff run, Henry was a monster, and Tannehill was excelling off that. This year, he's just taking it upon himself to run this offense while Henry hasn't gotten off to
without
a great
A.J.
start.
Brown last week as well.
Yeah, I just find it hard to believe the Vikings are going to be 0-3, losing back-to-back games at home. They're very good in that building. I just think they're going to pull out a win here, and I'll take Minnesota.
Fair enough. The surprising Las Vegas Raiders go to New England. The Raiders are 2-0. New England had a chance to be 2-0. They had that great goal line stand there. The Seahawks at the end of the game. Cam, as we talked about, has been extremely impressive as well, especially accuracy-wise in his command of this offense this season. I'm taking the Patriots at home because that's what they do. You know, they always are winning. They're winning at home, and it seems like they're not kind of punting on the season. It is awesome, though, that it's John Gruden as a Raider going back to New England to play there again after that, you know, the whole famous Tuck rule and stuff like that. I always love when he goes back into New England, especially how well Derek Carr and that offense have played this season, but I'm still taking the Patriots.
Yeah, this is an interesting game. I would not at all be surprised to see the Raiders pull off the upset.
No.
But I'm going to take the Patriots. They've gone through a lot here recently with the James White tragedy that we heard about.
It's so sad.
And Bill Belichick losing his mother at 98 years old.
Yeah.
So I think you probably saw today there was clips of Belichick wearing a T-shirt with holes in it.
I know,
to his
people
press
were
conference.
focusing on that.
Yeah, Bill Belichick basically can get away with whatever he wants to.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to bounce back. You know, you very rarely see Belichick lose back-to-back games, so I think he'll have his team ready to go and win a pretty close game on Sunday.
Yeah, one of the more interesting games to watch in Week 3, and I think we should keep an eye on these Las Vegas Raiders. We might have been sleeping on what's going on over there.
Yeah.
The next game is the Niners at Giants, so the Niners revisiting. You just touched on before we went on that the Niners are stationed in West Virginia right now, so they didn't have to go all the way back west. Lucky for them. They had a rash of injuries last week, complained about the turf on the field. Well, guess what? You're playing in the same turf again. I'm taking the Niners here. Even if Nick Mullins is starting the game, the Giants are not winning. The Niners still have too much talent, regardless of how many injuries they have.
I think the Giants need to win a game before I can pick them. So I'll let them win first before I ever pick them. And the 49ers still, they're a team that's built on their depth. So they're a team that can withstand a lot of losses. Now, maybe not the number that they've had so far.
It's getting a lot.
It's getting out of hand, and it's only week 2, which is unbelievable. But I agree with you. I think they win back-to-back games here at MetLife. I don't care that it's a backup quarterback likely starting. I still think they're going to get the job done.
Yeah, I still think it's honestly going to be like a 10-point to 2-touchdown victory. Bengals are going to the Eagles. The Eagles, we didn't have time really to touch on it, have been horrible. And through the first 2 weeks, and Carson Wentz has looked really bad, and we don't have time to dive into all of that. But playing a rookie QB at home, you need to win this. I'm taking the Eagles straight out of desperation. And even though I've liked what I've seen from Joe Burrow, there's still not a lot of talent, particularly on the defensive side of the ball in Cincinnati. If Doug Peterson wants to stick here with Carson Wentz before he starts passing it off to Jalen Hurts, well, Wentz better wake up and start winning some games. They need to win this. They're in desperation mode. I'm taking the Eagles.
Yeah, and this is a big year for Wentz coming off a season last year where he didn't perform up to expectations.
No.
There's always the question of how healthy he'll be able to be, being an injury-prone player in his past. But I'm with you here. I'm not taking a rookie quarterback on the road. You know, it's another case where let me see it happen first. And the Eagles, they're desperate, as you said, 0-2 at home. They lost on their home turf last week. I think they finally get the offense going a little bit and win this game.
Yeah, if they lose this game, we'll definitely be talking about that next podcast. That'll be one of our key topics. Switching over to Heinz Field with the Texans and the Steelers. Steelers have been a quiet 2-0 right now. Not anything overly impressive. But I like Deontay Johnson, the rookie wide receiver. I think he's played really well. Maybe he could be the number 1, and Smith-Schuster can kind of go back to the number 2. I've liked what I've seen from the defensive side of the ball, and I'm taking the Steelers because I love Deshaun Watson. But again, as we've talked about ad nauseum, the Texans are just they're in for a rough season.
Yeah, I'm going with the Steelers too. It was a game that almost got away from them last week against Denver. The Broncos were driving for potentially the
without Drew Lock.
Score. Yeah. But Pittsburgh has been solid, I think, both sides of the ball. Claypool, the other rookie receiver, had a big play last week. So I still think they're a pretty good team. They got most of their key guys healthy at this point. I'll go with the Steelers.
Yeah, I don't think they have a high potential ceiling playoff-wise, but I still think they're going to be a solid team in a pretty good division there in the AFC North. Switching over to the 4 o'clock games, we have your Jets at Colts.
We don't need to spend much time.
Don't have to spend much time here. I'm definitely taking the Colts as well. I don't see the Jets and Darnold with the pieces or the lack thereof that we've talked about. He's not winning this game here. And Phillip Rivers, if he wants to have any hope of making the playoffs, he better win a game like this.
Right now, the Jets look like maybe the worst team in the league. Gase looks completely lost. There's really hardly a good thing you could say about this team right now.
There really is. Do we know if Bell is playing this week, or is he going to miss it again?
I think he's going to miss it again.
Yeah, I think he is too.
So, Colts, not much more analysis needed.
There isn't. The 4 or 5 game again, the second one, is the Panthers at Chargers. Pretty interesting game. I know the Panthers are 0-2, but I've kind of liked some of the things they're doing there and completely changing over the roster, but I'm still taking the Chargers. And it was confirmed today that Justin Herbert will be starting for the foreseeable future in a very weird thing where Tyrod Taylor had cracked ribs and then in warm-ups punctured his own lung with his ribs. And so somehow that happened, so he's going to be out for a little while. I thought Herbert was incredibly impressive against the Chiefs there, and that defense was exhausted by the end, but they held Mahomes down through the whole game. Joey Bosa was fantastic. Melvin Ingram was fantastic. I'm taking the Chargers here. I like this team.
You know, it's funny when I put that Chargers-Chiefs game on, and I'm like, who is that at quarterback for the Chargers? I'm like, oh, Herbert's playing?
You think in the second week of the season.
Yeah, and I was like, did I miss some big news? I would have thought I definitely would have heard that, but it turned out it was right before the game at the announcement.
It was like 5 minutes before, barely.
And he really held his own. He was impressive, and you said that defense did a good job holding down Kansas City. The problem is you just can't hold down that Chiefs offense for too long, and then you saw Mahomes erupt with that one big play to Tyreek Hill. That's all you need, and then Harrison Butker making 58-yard field goals.
He made it look easy. Yeah. Three because of the timeout and the penalties. 3 in a row, easy as anything.
But I'm taking the Chargers here. I think they'll win this one.
If Herbert could work out the way he looked on Sunday, this could be a very interesting rivalry going forward for many, many years to come. First quarterback, I believe, Justin Herbert as well, to have a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown in his first game in the first half in NFL history as a rookie. So that was an interesting stat there. 425 games, there's 3 of them, a trio. There's the Lions at Cardinals. I'm taking the Cardinals here. We talked about Matt Patricia, and I'm not trusting anything the Lions are doing over there. And the Cardinals and what Cliff Kingsbury has done over there, and Kyler Murray particularly, they've looked incredibly impressive. I think they're going 3-0.
I agree. The Cardinals at home, Murray's been great. He's got an unbelievable weapon now with Hopkins. What a steal of a deal that was.
What a connection they've developed in 2 weeks. Like it was nothing.
So fast.
15 catches in the first game.
And they look like a team that's definitely headed for the playoffs this year. I know it's a long season. It's funny. I almost instinctively think this is a shorter season just because I'm so used to the baseball being 60 games, and I'm thinking we're playing like 11 games, but no, it's actually a 16-game season. Yeah. And the Cardinals are going to be a team to watch all year long.
I think there's honestly, with the extra playoff spot, you're going to get 3 teams out of the NFC West, and we'll just see who those 3 are. Bucks at Broncos. I'm taking the Bucks. I know, sometimes players struggle adjusting to the mile-high altitude. I know Tom Brady has not had a great career, particularly in Denver, but this isn't Peyton Manning on the other side. Drew Lock, I don't think, is playing again.
It's Jeff Driscoll.
It might be Jeff Driscoll. I believe they also just this week signed Blake Bortles, so maybe he's starting. Denver is a mess injury-wise right now, and even though I like a lot of the talent they have there, the Bucs should roll this. If they don't, we'll be talking about that next week.
Yeah, and Cortland Sutton, too, another big weapon, is out for them, so I agree. I think the Bucs coming off a win, sometimes, like you said, the adjustment playing in the mile high can be difficult, but this is a game the Bucs have to win.
Yeah, they have to absolutely to keep kind of pace in the NFC South there. And the final 425 game is the Cowboys at Seahawks. This is arguably maybe the most fascinating game, of week 2. I've taken the Seahawks just because of what Russell Wilson has done, but this is going to be another week of maybe a 40-point game for both sides because their defenses are not particularly good.
This is a fascinating game. I'm normally I have like my pick where I know at this one I'm struggling with because I remember one year where Seattle was at the top of its game and Dallas went in there. Remember Romo made a crazy play to Terrence Williams and they won that game.
That was a shocker.
So I could see the Cowboys winning this game, especially riding high off that huge win against Atlanta that we talked about. You know what? I'm going to take the Cowboys.
You taking the Cowboys?
Yeah, I'm taking the Cowboys, but boy, that's going to be really
it's going to be a fantastic game.
A lot of points.
He and Wilson, as we've said, is easily the front runner for MVP through the first 2 weeks. The Sunday night game is another good one. We got a lot of great QB matchups this week. Is Packers versus Saints.
Yeah.
Here, I'm going to surprise you, and I'm going to take the Packers. I know we're at home, but it's not the same home atmosphere with COVID going on, as we've talked about as well. There's no fans there in New Orleans. Breeze really didn't look great on Monday night. I think they're going to be without Michael Thomas again. And Aaron Rodgers, below the radar through the first 2 weeks, has looked MVP-like what he's doing.
40-plus points in back-to-back games. Yeah. You're on Green Bay, as am I. Yeah. I mean, I know that's a really difficult place to play, but I think right now the Packers are head and shoulders better than the Saints, especially given taking Michael Thomas out of the equation. That might make for a different situation, but based on what you saw from the Saints on Monday night in Vegas, that offense looks like it has a lot of work to do, and you got a hot Green Bay team coming in. I agree. I think it's another game where a lot of points are scored, but Packers now.
And definitely maybe it took a second year to for Rodgers to adjust and gel in this offense, but they look head and shoulders above.
He's playing with a chip on his shoulder.
He is definitely trying to prove people, maybe people like me and you out here, that he is still the guy. He is that guy.
Oh, yeah.
And the final game is the Monday night game, Chiefs and Ravens. Again,
classic.
Fantastic set of games we have in Week 3 here. This has been an interesting rivalry between the two teams so far. I'm taking the Chiefs. And I think the Ravens are and probably one of the only losses they're going to have this season. This is going to be back and forth. It's going to be very high scoring, but I think the Chiefs defense might make a play or two against Lamar. And if the Chiefs go up on the Ravens, so far we have not seen Lamar play well from behind. He can prove the doubters like me wrong this year, but until I see it, I'm not believing in it. And so I'm taking Mahomes and the Chiefs.
I'm going to go the other way with the Ravens. The Chiefs haven't completely clicked on all cylinders with their offense yet. And you know it's going to come at some point. Is it going to come against that vaunted Ravens defense in Baltimore? That's a tall order.
It's a tall order.
They're still going to put up their share of points, but I just think right now the Ravens, a little bit more of the balanced team, a little bit more complete right now, knowing they're playing at home. They're going to want this game in the worst way. I think they're going to come out swinging and take it on Monday night.
Yeah, I think this is going to be like kind of a 30-27 game. Don't be surprised if it's not a high-flying air attack affair and it's more of a ground and pound from both sides in both of these teams. But it's going to be a great game regardless.
Great game.
So, guys, that kind of wraps up our second edition, our second First and 10 podcast over here on Clueless Gamers. Brian, thank you for joining me.
Always a lot of fun.
We're up against the time here, so we're kind of just giving an outro here. But we'll be back next week to discuss all of these games, guys. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends if you be so kind. We'd love to talk to you down below. And until next First and 10 podcast, thanks for watching.